Don't confuse e.g., which means basically, for example, with i.e., which means that is to say, or in other words. And also don't confuse those with et al. And so how do you use et al., i.e., e.g., etc.? Let's start with the e.g. versus the i.e. E.g. stands for exempli gratia, whereas IE stands for id est. And so those are the full Latin terms. And so these are abbreviations. And so each of the letters is going to have a period after them. And then you're typically going to have a comma after that. You don't have to use italics for these because they're commonplace enough. Here's an example. Scientists compare customized CRISPR guide RNA with a Cas protein, e.g., Cas9, giving an example of a Cas9 protein that would work, in order to knock out, i.e., permanently inactivate, a gene of interest, e.g., AGO1, AGO3, or AGO4. So here I'm using EG because I'm referring to one of the Cas proteins, but there's other ones that could be used as well. Same with these gene names. I've only listed a few genes, but there are tons and tons of genes that you could potentially target and inactivate. And inactivate was explaining what I meant by knockout. So knockout is kind of this more jargon that we use. And now I'm explaining what it actually means in some other words. This will prevent the corresponding protein from being made, e.g., if scientists knock out AGO1, no Argonaute 1 protein will be made. So I'm giving an example, so I'm using the for example abbreviation. The results of such a genetic knockout can be hard to predict because effects are often pleiotropic, i.e., more than one process is affected. So I'm basically telling them what I mean by pleiotropic. Let's see if I did things correct. I put periods after each letter. I put a comma after them. And note that some places will say that if it's only like a single word or something, you don't need a comma, but it depends on your style guide. I have not italicized them, and I haven't used etc. with eg. And so some people might think that they need to put etc. after AGO1, AGO3, or AGO4, or whatever your list is if you have a list in your after your EG. But EG indicates that these are only some examples and that there are others. So let's talk a little about when we can use etc. and when we can talk about and others. So et al. And etc. Et al. Stands for Italia, and etc. stands for etc. Both of those are abbreviations, so they should have a period after them. Et, however, is not an abbreviation. That's a full Latin word. And so you put the period after all, but not after et. It all means and others, and it's often used to shorten author lists in scientific papers. So if there are more than two authors, typically you write the last name of the first author followed by et al. And I'll look at an example in a second. Don't confuse that with etc. So etc. is indicating that there's a non-defined list of things, whereas et al., you're saying there's this defined list, but I'm only listing some of them. So I'm only listing one author, but there are three authors. But it's not like there could be endless authors. There's a set list of authors, and I'm not putting the full thing, but there's this distinct set of them. Whereas etc. is not a defined set. For example, the antibiotics linezolid and chloramphenicol cause context-dependent inhibition of human mitochondrial ribosomes, i.e., they cause the ribosomes to stall only when translating specific sequences, e.g., MMY, ALF. Bebel et al., 2025. So yes, that was actually a finding from a paper of mine from my postdoc work. And I was not the only author, but I was the first author. And so I put my last name followed by et al. I have my period. That is how you often do these author date format. If you have more than two authors, you just put the first author, et al., comma, and then the year. And I used IE here to put in other words what I meant by saying context-dependent inhibition, because readers might not be familiar with that. So there you go. E.g., for example, i.e., That is to say, or in other words, et al. And others. Hope this helps you understand these Latin phrases that come up a lot in science and some other places and help you know when to use them.